Welcome back to the PFF NFL show here in the Trenches edition for Week 13 in the NFL. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Ollie Connolly. We're going to do a couple of things on this show. We're going to recap Monday Night Football a little bit, talk about Bo Nix and Jameis Winston, the flamethrower matchup that, of course, we all knew that it was going to be between those two quarterbacks. Maybe a little sarcasm there, but we will break that down in its entirety, not just their performance, but the overall performances of both teams and the result. We're also going to talk about two trench players that are playing really well as of late. Jordan Mailata for the Philadelphia Eagles. No shock that the Philadelphia Eagles are playing well along the offensive line, but Mailata's play has been so good lately, especially this past weekend. We got to highlight why it was so good. And then Leonard Williams as well, what he is doing in Mike McDonald's defense and that four-man front. Whew, it's a thing of beauty, especially in a revenge game against the New York Jets that we saw this past weekend. Ollie, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. I just literally ran off a 12-hour red-eye flight to come and do this with you. I had a sum total of 40 minutes of sleep, and I ran for the first time in my life. I ran off public transport to come and discuss Bo Nix, and I couldn't be more excited. That was maybe, if not the game of the season, maybe the most fun we've had watching football this season.
That was a blast. And shout out to you for the dedication of making sure that you get here to record this show to give the people your thoughts on Bo Nix. If I told you that you were going to do that in like week 2 of the season, you would have probably told me to get the hell out of here. But no, it was a fun game. Obviously, it was a very high-scoring game. Weren't sure that was going to be the case, right? I mean, the Browns, certainly as they're currently constructed, I know since Jameis Winston's been the starter, it's been a little bit different, but they're known for the defense, right? That's the more talented side of the ball, the more solidified side of the ball. And then the Broncos, we've highlighted on this show how great the Broncos defense has been this season. Who knew that Riley Moss was going to now get MVP votes for how that defense looked without him on Monday night against Cleveland? But we'll get into all that. Let's start by talking about Bo Nix, though. You obviously talked about sort of the show, which produces 41 points. You know, pick six certainly goes into that with some of the interceptions that Jameis Winston threw. But Bo Nix on the night, 18 for 35, 294 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions from Bo Nix. And when you look at some more of the PFF stats, 76.0 PFF passing grade in that game. 2 big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays. Just your thoughts overall, Bo Nix. I mean, it was a game where obviously he had the big-time throw, which I think that we'll talk about because it really changes how you kind of look at Bo Nix when that was a narrative about him going into the season in his scouting report. But it was one of the games where it's just a 60% adjusting completion percentage. We're not used to seeing that from Bo, but we're also not used to seeing some of the deep throws that he had in this game, one in particular, that long touchdown throw. Overall, your thoughts on Bo Nix from Monday Night Football?
Yeah, I was actually really happy to see that grade on PFF this morning because I thought when I went back and watched the film, it was better than watching how he played in real time. I think there's an awful lot of situations where you couldn't really ask for much more than him. I didn't think that the Broncos' early game plan was as sophisticated as we're used to seeing from them, particularly in the protection world, what they were doing with Myles Garrett, often leaving him one-on-one a bunch against Garrett Bowles, being really pass-heavy, not really getting the run game going until late in the third quarter. So there's an awful lot on his shoulders. He was forced to speed up his process a bunch, and that's where he's had some trouble this season. And when he's kind of settled in over these last 6-7 weeks is when he started to trust the interior of that offensive line we've discussed before, has been really quick working through second, third reads, getting to his check downs. Last night where it was fun was that wasn't really an option for him. Things were just closing on him too quick. So it's, can you play then a super sped up game? And there was some bad errors. There was the dropped interception where I thought it was pretty sloppy, pretty poor rookie stuff where Rodney McLeod should have picked him off. But then you mentioned the huge big time throw. I don't know how you could throw a ball any better than that, right? Perfect concept versus coverage type situation. Really good situational stuff from Sean Payton. He knew exactly what the Browns wanted to do in that situation. They run that inverted 2 coverage that they busted on that one. Like 46% of the time in third and long situations this season. So they had the perfect play call dialed up. And Nix, it wasn't like he could just sit there and read out, right? It was really, really quick. It was within the flow of the concept. And that to me is the thing that's encouraging with him is we're seeing a little bit more down the field. We're seeing a little bit more in the intermediate section of the field, but it's happening quicker. It's not just that he's got so much time because the interior of the line's played so well. He is speeding up what he does. He's still a little bit scattershot, but I really am liking the progress we're seeing over the second half of the season.
The average depth of target for him, 13.2. I just went back and looked this up. That is the third highest single game average depth of target that he has had since his freshman year at Auburn. So you look at all 5 years that he was in college football, and then obviously this year as well, that 13.2 average depth of target is the third highest. And the only other two that he has, there was one game at Oregon where he had a 13.6 average depth of target. And then his freshman year at Auburn, there was one game where it was like a 14.2 or something like that. And college is obviously different than the NFL level as well. NFL defense is a lot tighter. You'll take things a little bit shorter. Normally, the average depth of target goes down when you get to the NFL level just because you can't take as many deep shots as you do at the college level. So for that to be in the realm of one of the highest average depth of target games was fantastic for me to see. And what I love the most about Bo Nix in this game is it was very... To say it was un-Bo Nix, I think, is unfair to him. It was very un-Bo Nix of the narrative about him, right? I mean, people thought like, oh, he's just this, low average depth of target, low or high completion percentage type of a player, screens, mesh concepts, slants, things like that, timing routes, getting the ball out of your hands quickly. But the thing that I like the most about Bo Nix is that not only was his adjusted completion percentage down, and that he threw multiple turnover-worthy plays for the first time since week 1, he won the game when those things were present. With the talk about Bo Nix has always been, well, if you give him the perfect situation, if you give him the perfect surrounding, then sure, he could win some NFL games for you. He wasn't perfect. The whole setup wasn't perfect last night, and yet they still won the football game. Now, obviously, Jameis Winston giving away some pick sixes, some interceptions, some turnover-worthy plays, that goes into it. I understand that. I fully understand that. But you need these types of victories in the NFL, sometimes where it just doesn't look pretty. And I think for the longest time, people didn't believe Bo Nix was that caliber of a quarterback. It's almost like they said, well, if he doesn't go to the Detroit Lions like Jared Goff, then he's just not going to be a good quarterback. And that's not the case. Like, even independent of the massive big-time throw that he had to Marvin Mims, him not playing well but still doing enough to win the football game was really encouraging for me, and it should be for any Broncos fan out there as well. And I'm glad that he gave us the frozen rope deep throw of that big-time throw to Marvin Mims, because it reminded people the guy's always had a good arm. People that didn't think, now, like Josh Allen, Anthony Richardson, no, that's not what I'm saying, but to me, Bo Nix has always had like a tier 2 caliber arm for the NFL level. He just didn't throw it a lot when he was at Oregon. And you're seeing it more and more because Sean Payton, I think, is empowering him at the NFL level to say, dude, we didn't just draft you to be really smart with the football to go to it in short areas. We drafted you because we know you can make those throws deep down the field. I'm going to dial them up and I'm going to scheme them up for you, and then we want you to hit them. And last night, I think, was a great example or reminder that the dude's got the arm in him. We just didn't see it a ton at Oregon, but it was there if you watched enough Bo Nix film. And that's why I was encouraged about him and why I understood him going in the first round and taking that bet on him, and why we're seeing some good investments from him here. Any final thoughts on Bo Nix before we move to the other side of Jameis Winston?
Yeah, just to put a cap on what you said, I think the aggressiveness is all around. I mean, to have that kind of depth of targets, a defense that bases out of 2 deep shells, right, is a different animal altogether than playing a team who is revving up the blitz a ton and you think you can beat it and keep a bunch of guys into protection. He was turning down easy throws to hit more difficult throws down the field. And I get the completion percentage wasn't exactly what people would look at and think of Bo Nix, but he was passing up easy throws for trickier throws and ripping 15 yards down the field. And I think that is just so encouraging to see. And seeing the confidence from Peyton too, they clearly had a plan for what they would do in 3rd and long situations. And you would not have thought, certainly me, coming out of draft night, that Sean Payton would have felt comfortable saying, we are going to run a 3-seam heater, keep 7 guys in protection on 3rd and long against Jim Schwartz when we know someone's going to move and rotate and do something funky. And I believe that this guy can not only hit, you mentioned there the arm strength. This was not a tier 2 arm where he can stand back and rock and kind of like really drive through the ball, right? This was a completely in rhythm, natural arm talent throw. And we will not see, outside of maybe something Anthony Richardson does that we've never seen before because he does the wildest things, but that level of big time throw in rhythm, that is Allen-esque, that is Mahomesian. And I just did not think we would see that at all with him, frankly. And to see it this quickly in his development is just so encouraging.
So on the other side of things, Jameis Winston. 34 for 58. 58 attempts for Jameis Winston. I mean, if you tell me that Jameis Winston's going to get 58 passing attempts, I'm watching the football game. I don't care. Like, I'm turning it on. I'm going to the football game. It's the most entertaining ticket in sports anytime that he's playing in a game. And getting to 58 attempts, I mean, you know, some crazy stuff's going to happen. 497 passing yards in this game, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. 2 of those interceptions were returned for pick sixes. And I do want to be fair to Jameis. It's 4 turnover-worthy plays, but it was only 1 turnover-worthy play before that 2-minute drive where he had the second pick six. Right before that, it was just 1 turnover-worthy play. It was that pick six, and so then there were 2 more turnover-worthy plays, sort of when they were just trying to push the ball deep down the field and needed to really get down the field. So I don't really count those as much. So for all intents and purposes, I would tell you that he had 2 turnover-worthy plays in this game when the game was really still within hand. So it's not the worst night in the world for him, especially because he had 2 big-time throws as well. Obviously, the 4 touchdowns and orchestrating things in that way. What did you think of Jameis's performance? Obviously, a massive roller coaster, but if you take away 2 of those 2 turnover-worthy plays, his 2 big-time throws, his 2 turnover-worthy plays, just your thoughts on Jameis last night.
I mean, the most perfect Jameis game we've had in a while, right? Since probably the 30-30 season of just some of the most outrageous throws you'll see anyone even try. The thing I love about Jameis's recklessness is it is not just simply bombs away down the field, right? Where it's what the reputation was in Tampa, like he'll just let it fly down the field. There's certainly a bunch of that. He is throwing throws that no coach would ever allow a quarterback to throw. I'm talking oppo hash hitches, not within the flow of the play. He has this routine thing, which is where he can often get caught out, where quick out routes are covered really well. And he thinks the only way I can get that out there is if I hang it inside intentionally and someone can spin it behind the head of the covering cornerback. No one else tries those things because they know it's bad. Bad stuff happens. And Jameis tries them all the time, and he completes plenty of them too. And outside of, you mentioned the 1 pick six, which was bad early in the game, I mean, that is as good as he's probably played. And you have to contrast with how this thing looked when Deshaun Watson was running the show. There was not these guys running wide open down the field. There were not the big time throws splitting between 2 defenders. There was not the high pointing in the red zone to Njoku the way he did when he got down there. There were not the tight window throws in the red zone, going 3 for 3 early on for touchdowns in the red zone. He is elevating the offense. There are a bunch of busts. We can get into some of the defensive stuff for the Broncos if you want. But I thought there was a bunch of high level throws, which just showed the difference when you get a guy who can really dial it in and rip it down the field compared to what was happening when Watson was running the show.
Yeah, I would love for you to sort of go to the other side of the ball. We were going to talk about the defense I think for both sides, but if you want to start with the things on Denver, what did you see from Denver last night?
Well, he does have the huge issue at corner, right? You mentioned Riley Moss. I do think Troy Aikman made an excellent point, I thought, on the broadcast about them having this really late bye and them looking tired. And outside of where they can rotate more in the defensive front, I think linebackers and safeties in particular, I think you could feel the fact that they've played an awful lot of snaps. Even just as a defense generally, without having a late bye in the season, they've played a ton of snaps this season. I did think they looked slightly gassed, and they had a real difficult time communicating anyway. And then you just have a sinkhole at one spot at corner, which kind of corrupts what was the entire defensive game plan. And you've got Jerry Jeudy running wide open all over the place. So just so many busts. And I thought quite unorthodox Vance Joseph decisions in big situations that just went completely against them. A number of busted coverages, even guys like Patrick Surtain busting coverages we're just not used to seeing from him. So just a really lethargic, unexpected performance outside of the edge rushers having some big moments.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it can't be that much of a glaring weak spot for the Denver Broncos. And I wondered if I was going to go into this thinking like, man, there were so many busted coverages last night. I was like, is the Broncos defense maybe not as good as like what we kind of thought they were? No, I really don't think that's the case. I think it was just a lot of miscommunication stuff, not having Riley Moss in there. So I think that was a much bigger issue for them, that when they can get Moss back in the lineup, I think this is still going to be one of the better defenses in the NFL. Not a lot to talk about when it comes to the Cleveland Browns and major takeaways in this game. Them being 3-9 on the season. The offense having a lot more life. To me, though, long-term, as we kind of talk about these teams, we'll start with the Browns. The offense having so much more life with Jameis Winston, to me, only puts more pressure on the Deshaun Watson situation, because he's obviously coming off an Achilles tear. He already kind of was not healthy. He was beat up last year, too. And just straight up, when he was out there, he was bad. I mean, the offense has never looked like this at any point in time while Deshaun Watson has been the quarterback. And so how Jameis is playing is even more damning about the player that you have all of this money tied to in Deshaun Watson, because it's hard to convince yourself that you should go back to that guy outside of just simply the money that you have had poured into him. So for me, I don't know how much money the Browns are really going to have realistically to kind of move around and to bring another quarterback in, because Jameis, I believe, is going to be a free agent. Is that true? Is he? Do you know off the top of your head? Is he? So he's a free agent this offseason, but he's playing well to the point where bringing him back, you're not going to get him as cheap as what you got him for this year to be a certified to be like absolutely the backup on this team. If they re-sign him, they're going to re-sign him and be like, well, his agents are going to say, wait a second, my guy was better than the guy who was starting, so you're not going to just get my guy for the cheap, and we're not just going to throw you a bone here. So to me, long term, this game and how Jameis Winston has been playing only makes it even harder to go into next season with Deshaun Watson as your starter. Do you sort of feel the same way, whether it's bringing back Jameis or whether it's drafting a quarterback in the first round this year?
Oh yeah, I mean they can't go in next season with Deshaun Watson. He was quite literally the worst quarterback in the NFL. It was not even really a debate. He was unplayable. They were forced to play him because of a money situation, and they've got this challenge now, right, of not just the Watson money, but what does that rip out of the rest of the roster that needed work anyway? You're not going to have a whole bunch of maneuverability to go and find upgrades all over the roster. Even last night, the offensive line gave up a 29% pressure rate. It's not like James was doing this in a perfect environment where Watson was just missing throws, and now James is hitting some of them. He's making plays on his own and showing, I believe, that he can still be a starter caliber player. And I think that will be the game, because people know you're going to get the turnovers. They know you're going to get some dumb decisions. That's just baked into the Jameis experience at this point. But they'll watch all those throws, all the creativity when there's pressure around him. And someone like the Raiders or a team who wants to go and draft a rookie next season will say, we'll go give that guy, I don't know, 12, 14, $50 million to be a bridge starter for us. We've got a bunch of cap space. Wouldn't we do that? And I think the only thing Cleveland have going in their favor is that like a relationship there where they can speak to Jameis and say like, hey, we love you so much. You love being here. You're having a good time. Can you take a real steep discount because you just love playing football here so much? Seems like a tall ask if he's going to have a pretty decent market, which I would suspect he will do.
So now we go over to the Broncos side of things. Sitting here at 8-5. Sitting pretty, honestly. I mean, this is a team that I did not think that they were going to have this record. I thought that they were going in the right direction. I like the investment in Bo Nix, but man, for them to be 8-5 this season, especially after starting the year 0-2 and to be on the run that they are on, it's pretty impressive. You mentioned they've got the bye week coming up, so they've got a week of rest, which I think is important for this team not having a bye week yet. And then it's the Indianapolis Colts, it's the Los Angeles Chargers. It's two tough matchups at the end of the year. You're facing the Cincinnati Bengals and the Kansas City Chiefs, and you can say what you want about those teams. The Chiefs not looking like the juggernauts of the past, and the Cincinnati Bengals, being a team that has really struggled this season. But I think that certainly they have the ability to play much better than their record. And anytime you got to go up against Joe Burrow, you know that you got to put up a lot of points, especially for the year that he is having. What's your thoughts overall on the Broncos? Feels like they got a good shot now to sneak into the playoffs and be one of those wild card teams in the AFC.
Yeah, I think unfortunately the AFC, just as neutral fans, it looks like it's pretty much sorted with a month of the season to go, that we just kind of have our playoff race locked in and we'll have some jockeying for seeding. If you just go by something as basic and raw as point differential, which I know has its faults, certainly when you look at different strength of schedules, they are essentially tied for second in the AFC. I would never fathom that this season. I would have thought if it was going to happen, it would have been pure chaos in the defense last night, getting pick sixes, juicing some of the scoring totals. The fact they've had this kind of ebb and flow throughout the season where defensively they have been pretty consistently in the top 5 for much of the year, but they've had some really rough games and some poor game plans, and they still find ways to win because Peyton is able to completely shapeshift his game plan week to week to try and get enough points on the board, and Bo Nix taking off the way he has over the midpoint to second half of the season. I understand why people would look at it right now and say, hey, you get a rookie quarterback. Is the defense starting to sag a little bit? That's the team you want to play in the first round of the playoffs. But I'm not so sure. I really am not so sure. When you have a really chaotic defense that can create turnovers and a quarterback who is showing that he can pepper all parts of the field and it's not just this kind of one-dimensional, as you mentioned, mesh, screen, take off when he wants to type quarterback, and he seems to be ascending in the second half of the season. I'm not sure if I was Pittsburgh or Buffalo or whoever's going to be in that is the team I would necessarily want to face.
So let's move on now. We've sort of recapped Monday Night Football. I want to get into the trenches, the true soul of the show. And I want to start by talking about a team that we know is going to make the playoffs, and the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Philadelphia Eagles feel a lot more confident with their 10-2 record than what we saw from them last season. We can feel a little bit better about where they're at as a team. And their offensive line, a major identity of what they do, is where we want to start here. Jordan Mailata, this past week, their left tackle, a 94.5 offensive grade, a 95.6 pass blocking grade, 31.3 impact run blocking grade, which means 1 out of every 3 run blocking plays that he had was earning a positive PFF grade, which is, I think that just so people know, a little peek behind the curtain, when we say that we judge every single play, sometimes a play is just a play, right? I mean, sometimes it's a scale where you can get a 0 on a play, and a 0 is fine. It just means, hey, you did your job, you sort of did what you were supposed to do. Positive and negative plays, we sort of are exactly that. It's how did you go above and beyond on the play? Did you really take out a defensive lineman all by yourself? Were you the one who paved the way for a rushing lane behind you for a running back to be able to get past the line of scrimmage cleanly? Like those kinds of things. 1 out of every 3 run blocking play to have a positive grade is an insanely high rate. You also saw only 1 pressure allowed, 0 sacks. Mailata's playing at an unbelievable level. We talk about Lane Johnson on the other side is a future Hall of Famer, one of the best offensive tackles in the game, even at his age. The interior offensive line still playing very, very well, even with the departure of Chase and Kelsey. That group is playing strong together. But man, Mailata is just such a difference maker on that side. I mean, we've got really good offensive tackles around the league, but Mailata is in that tier 1 of guys who can make a big difference. At least I certainly think so. What do you think about Jordan Mailata, where he is versus the rest of the league, and then just, of course, how he played this weekend?
Yeah, I'm completely with you, because for me, it's not just, I think people look at him and say, because of the rawness, because of how late he came to the game, right? A lot of it is just raw strength and power and foot speed, and so he can kind of get away with certain things. When I watch him, it is teaching tape stuff all the time for a guy who's played the sport for like 5-6 years. It is absolutely remarkable, and Stoutland gets a bunch of the credit, right, just nationally. I don't think that's fair. I think for this guy to be that perfect but teach clinic stuff out drive by drive, that just doesn't happen. Even guys like Trent Williams don't do that stuff. They find unorthodox ways. It's what makes him so special. He is in perfect position all the time. There's an unbelievable play that I'm not sure I've seen someone do before, certainly not this season, against Madubuike on, I think, the second drive of the game, where it's Landon Dixon, Jordan Mailata double team. That's like the base of how they want to get Jordan Mailata involved for most of the game. And this is not just a rock and go double team together. It's basically Dickinson goes first, and Mailata has to come and try and twist and contort Madubuike off the ball to create a path for Saquon Barkley. And Madubuike has this kind of funky, unorthodox style when he takes on double teams. He just kind of drops one knee to the floor and twists his back. And he did it over and over again against the Eagles. And what he's trying to do is kind of blur the vision of the running back, that he's not quite being driven off the ball, right? He's positioned his body in the sense where the running back looks and goes, that doesn't really look like a hole. I'll try and go somewhere else. So he drops his knee to the floor, has basically been rocked off the ball by Landon Dixon. And here comes Jordan Mailata to surge and pick back up Madubuike, one of the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL, and then reposition and torque him and twist him towards the sideline to create the hole for Saquon Barkley. I have never seen someone do that. Usually a lineman comes up and just says, well, the guy's given up ground already. I'll just bury him into the floor. That's going to look good on film. I'm going to get a bunch of high fives. He's like, no, what this play needs is a lane for Saquon Barkley. I'll pick the dude up and I'll throw him out. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And he does this stuff all the time. So you have this overwhelming dominant athleticism in a league full of 1%ers, but the technique is so solid and so good in the run game. He's just never out of position. And because he's so quick and so efficient with his movement, he can get to 2 or 3 moves that other guys are just not able to get to, right? Where he can seal one guy one way, then flip back, get to the perfect angle the other way at lightning speed. So he just is playing on a whole other level in the run game right now.
I know the exact play that you're talking about, because I also had the same thought. I was like, why didn't he push him to the ground? Like, why didn't he just, we talk about that all the time, like a snap and trap move. It wasn't exactly that, but it was sort of the same thing where, like, all right, you're bringing a guy down to the ground and you're just saying, all right, well, now I'm going to sit on you. Now you're totally out of the play. But you're right. It's almost like the play needed a little bit something else. And the upper body and core strength that you have to basically like keep your legs driving but be low and pick Madubuike up, and then you have the grip strength to just hang on when he realizes, okay, now I got to get off this block. You've already got your hands inside exactly where they need to go. The core strength that this guy has is really what the big difference maker is. And I think his example is why you see these teams throw these flyers on some of these players that maybe haven't played football for a long time. Maybe they're overseas players, European players, rugby players, like whatever it is. And they're just giving these guys a shot because it is sort of like going back to Mailata's roots of him being like a rugby dude. It's sort of the same principles about wrestling. When you wrestle in high school as a trench player, it teaches you two things. One, well, it actually teaches you three things. One, physicality is a prerequisite. Like being physical, getting hit, getting hurt, like all of that, like feeling pain, it's just a prerequisite. Like that's what's going to happen every single time the ball is snapped. You basically just have to deal with it and live with it if you want to have success in the trenches, because you got to be able to take the punishment and dish it out. So that physical part of the game, it's a prerequisite. The next one, it teaches you how to be okay with uncomfortable situations. The core strength is sort of the third point. The core strength that you get when you wrestle, just naturally how strong your body is at a central point and how balanced you are, how great your core strength is. Obviously, that's a great thing. But in wrestling, you are in all of these really weird positions, right? There could be a guy who will either take you down to the mat, or he'll get your arm, like a certain way, or he'll get his arm a certain way, or he'll get his legs a certain way, where you are just very like uncomfortable. Like I think about this with like UFC fighting as well. It's a little bit more of an evolution, but it kind of goes back to like when you are on the ground game, when you're wrestling as a UFC fighter, you're sort of in these really weird positions, and you almost have to be able to like stay very calm in these situations, and then you have to get your body to be strong in ways that it's not naturally in everyday life. All of that goes into, in my opinion, what we see from Jordan Mailata. There were so many little examples, even in this past game, where he showed you the grip strength, the rear delt strength of his shoulders, the core strength, being comfortable when guys were like putting him in weird positions. I mean, then you even go to pass blocking as well, which he's not as smooth in pass blocking. I think his weight's a little high on his toes and he's a little bit more hunched over. And so naturally, he's just going to hold a lot of that power in his upper half. And sometimes that can, mess with his pad leverage and consistency there. But it's like 0 sacks, 1 pressure allowed. It's not like it's bad by any means. It's just something that you kind of think about, which is how he naturally carries himself. But it's all of those physical characteristics that manifest itself into a guy who, it's not like he grew up playing football. He didn't play it from age 5 on. He was somebody who you looked at, you saw him play a different sport, and you went, we got something here. This could be a special offensive lineman, and I think Jordan Mailata just embodies so much of what is needed at the offensive line position, not only in the NFL, but anywhere you play football.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it, because this is just like weight room strength, right? It's what you're talking about. It's having the ability to be coordinated and flexible and then have power within that flexibility, right? What are all these weird anterior muscles that you can't necessarily always just lift forward to get? And do you have a kind of innate sense of leverage to go with that? You know how your body can move and position itself to be as powerful as you need as you're twisting and talking people. We see with Zach Fraser every week, right? Another great high school and I think early college wrestler. You see the exact same thing, right? These guys have a natural understanding of they're really strong in certain positions their body can get to what the other guys in the trenches just aren't able to get to. They're more linear athletes in that sense. And Mailata certainly is like that. And I just love when now you see them evolving their offense around him. They recognize this guy is so special at moving. He's just an unusual athlete for us. They've kind of reoriented a lot of their quarterback run game, their read game, how they get to this guard tackle counter read that has become one of the base elements of the offense, where it's either Saquon Barkley in space or it's Dickerson and Mailata rolling around with Jalen Hurts coming downhill. I don't know which is the best option there. I think both of them seem pretty lousy, and that's why they keep putting up points on people for the most part. And even the last Saquon Barkley explosive run for the touchdown, a tackle power play, they have not run that almost all season. They've run it twice going into that game, and in a must-have, must-score spot, they say, who do we want to feature? Saquon Barkley's our best player. Who's our best player wrapping to daylight? It's Jordan. Let's get Jordan wrapping around and Saquon, and let's see how it goes. And it pops for an explosive touchdown run. So you can see just in the way they're calling things and designing their offense, what they think of the tier of their offense, right? That they know Lane Johnson is probably the best tackle in football, the cleanest in pass pro. Mailata not as effective, as you mentioned, in the straight pass pro. He kind of just wants to get into into the same hand-to-hand fight if he can. And if you're not a sophisticated pass rusher, he'll just run you to the opposite goalpost. That's something he likes to do regularly. If you have a more sophisticated pass rusher, you can set up moves and kind of get him off balance. You can get after him that way. But they've recognized that we are a downhill run base and layer from their offense. And the best way to get to that is to have either a Dickerson Mailata double team or Mailata wrapping and clearing the way for Saquon Barkley. So they're telling us in their play calling what they think of this guy, that he to them is a true tier 1 tackle.
Yep. He's been fantastic. There's no doubt about it. Somebody else who's been playing some really good football lately is Leonard Williams, defensive lineman for the Seattle Seahawks. A little revenge game for him this week against the New York Jets. Overall this season, though, from PFF grade perspective, it's the best year that he has had. 86.3 season grade is the top grade overall that we would have for Leonard Williams if something like that holds. This past week against the New York Jets, 92.6 overall grade, 4 total pressures, 3 sacks, as you see there. He had 3 stops, and he had that pick 6 as well, which is a very fun play where he was lined up sort of as the interior player. You had the linebacker. You got trips to the right. You got the linebacker coming down to blitz, but you also have the slot safety, or the slot corner, coming to blitz. Aaron Rodgers knows that. He's throwing hot to the slant, and oh, wait, how did Leonard Williams get there? He tips it up, and then he runs it all the way back for a score. So that was kind of a fun play for him. But just outside of that play as well, your thoughts on Leonard Williams, sort of how he has played over the last couple of weeks. He's playing really well lately, and then just his overall fit. Guy who he's been praised for his versatility, right? I think when he was coming out of USC as well, they thought, okay, doesn't matter, odd front, even front, defensive tackle, defensive end, this guy can play any sort of position. And I felt like for a decent amount of time throughout his career, he's been a part of more of a 3-man front, and it feels like this more predominant 4-man front with Mike McDonald, right? I'm saying that right. Mike McDaniel, Mike McDonald. I get very confused with those two names being in the NFL. But Mike McDonald's defense, it feels as though he's at home. And you get that versatility, but you also get a lot of one-on-one opportunities for him to show his strength there. What do you think about Leonard Williams and how he's been playing?
Yeah, what's really interesting, if you just go through the snap totals this season, right, and you will see decent numbers for kind of every position in the front, including lining up in the box, head up as a nose, or if he's playing stud up as more of a Leo, right side, left side, to your point, playing as a true get up the field 3 technique, which is where I always felt he could be his most effective in the NFL. Just put him there playing 40 snaps, let's all have a good time. Teams have liked to bounce him around and move him around, put him in some more heavier situations. When you just see those alignments, I think it would be understandable to think, well, they just move them around throughout every game. Like, that's what they do. And they do that somewhat. But they've really had a challenge all season long where they've been changing their front structure constantly all season from what they want to be their base load. And they change it massively depending on whether they're playing a kind of Niners base type team in terms of their run style of game. But they just had so many problems fitting the run early in the season. They were trading out different linebackers, right? Finding anyone they could get off the street to play linebacker for them. They would just wholesale shift while they asked to the front every single week. I think what they've got to as a nice kind of middle ground now is recognizing this guy cannot be blocked one-on-one all game. He's going to get 3 or 4 quality wins early in the rep every single game. So we got to find a way to get our most disruptive interior player in good spots as often as possible. And he has just been beating up on some really, really good players. If you go through the list of the guys he's had to play against and who he's either played to a draw or had a higher win rate than he has loss rate, it is like a who's who of really talented interior linemen in the league. Some of them are really good tackles as well. And I just don't think, I'm trying to think of a guy who, if you think of the first sack of the game, where he basically is lined up as a left end, he fires off the ball, he erupts his way through a right tackle, running back double team, essentially, bullies his way through that, then hits a spin move to close to Aaron Rodgers. Are there many of the guys who could do that and then play the role of nose tackle and play the role of one-tech penetrator? They're outside of Chris Jones, Larry Ogunjobi could probably do it if asked. There really aren't that many. Dexter Lawrence isn't asked to do that. It's a really wide array of skills, right? Hit someone with a spin move to sack a quarterback and hold the point as a nose tackle against the Niners and do well and get stops and penetrate. Like, it's just hard to find those guys anywhere in the league. So he has given them this ability to on the fly throughout the season, be like, well, that structure didn't work. Let's bin that off and let's try something else. We've got Leonard. He can play basically anywhere for us. And I think they found a really nice sweet spot now of what is required of him, particularly on early downs, and then let him go eat on later downs.
He is, I mean, the strength is imposing. I mean, watching this Cardinals game, Tristan Colon, Evan Brown as well on the other side of things. Like, he's eating these dudes' lunch. I mean, he's getting if they let him into the chest, I mean, it's over. He's gonna forklift them straight back into the quarterback. And so, to me, it all starts around the strength portion of the game. I talked about the prerequisite of physicality. When you play in the NFL, you have to be powerful. It's why, as a scout, I'll watch some of these lighter players, like lighter 3 technique players, lighter pass rushers, where, I might be a little bit lower on going into a draft or things like that. And some people might be like, hey, this guy was really productive. He's really fast. Like, what's the deal? Why are you a little bit lower on him? And it normally comes from when I have questions about how much power they can play with. Are they able to hold up in the strength portions of the game? Leonard Williams, a big reason why he was unanimously loved when he was coming out of his draft class, is because that was never a worry. That was never something that you really had to think about during his time at USC. It's what allowed people to think, okay, well, is he an interior player? Is he on the outside? Well, it's because he has the strength to play on the interior. And now we see him as more of an interior player than a defensive end, I think. I don't have the snap counts in front of me, but even just watching, the Seattle Seahawks game back, it feels like he's much more inside, because that's really where the one-on-one advantages are coming from. He is quick enough to be able to beat guards with quickness, but he's also powerful enough to hold the point of attack, and you're right, be able to anchor as a 1 technique, as a true nose, or whether he's at a 3 or a 4-eye or whatever it is. He is somebody who brings true versatility, and I think we'd like to talk about that with a lot of players, but to me, he is the guy who, man, you pairing him with Byron Murphy, I mean, moving forward, I mean, next year, this is going to be one of the best interior defensive line duos in the NFL, I think. You start to get even better pass rushers on the outside. You start to get a more reliable linebacker room behind you. This has got the makings of a really damn good front seven, and he's a big reason why I'm excited to have him and Byron Murphy II in that same defensive line room moving forward.
Yeah, and they already used the whole group of them creatively. The 3rd sack against the Jets is an overload front right, where he's the middle guy. The 3, you're getting him a design one-on-one. And because he's so powerful, everyone is always thinking, well, if he's not flying off the ball, it's a stun. Everyone is terrified of him just crushing through you, 2 after help. And then everyone is so fast on the Seahawks front. It's like, well, if there's a free space, we are in deep trouble. So they've really layered in this fear of the power move. You can go through Quint Miners, Dominic Pooney. These are really strong guys, top tier, can hold up against everyone. Their game is based on strength type guys, strength and angles and shuffling their feet to absorb power. And he is blasting people into the backfield. I mean, the Cardinals game is almost like embarrassing. It's like every single play, he's dumping someone on Kyler Murray's lap. Murray can't see what's happening. He's trying to bail out and do different things. And what I love about his game is he has a really subtle array of ways to actually disengage. Some of these power rushes, right, they just drive and drive and drive, and they get parallel to the quarterback. They try and snap off or do something, or they're kind of assist makers, right? And Williams has some of this to his game too, where they drive someone back. The quarterback has to try and move, and an edge guy comes and cleans it up for them, and it's kind of a team effort, team rush sack. He has all these different ways once he is into the backfield and the power moves work to actually get off. And he's nimble enough to go and make plays in the backfield. He's an effort player and a closer in a kind of bull rush body type. And sometimes those two things aren't always that consistent. That's why you cycle through these guys who kind of stunt heavy type players for you along the interior. They can't always close you. They help in the team rush effort. He brings it all. It's really, he's having a remarkable season. He's helped transform that defense every single week. Whatever is asked of him, he's playing at the highest possible level. And there have been fluctuations where one week the role doesn't suit him perfectly, or the matchup isn't great, or they ask him to go and say, hey, you got 20 reps against Trent Williams this week, and it's a tough assignment for anyone, and the grades will suffer because of that. But because of how versatile he is, because of the broad skill set you mentioned that everyone wants a power rusher, whether it's outside or inside, they're able to move him around and do different things to him and get him some advantages on given weeks.
So I'm going to throw you a little curveball here, because I do want to talk about one other trench player. I want to talk about Nick Herbig and what he's doing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. This dude has been unbelievable this season. 93.4 pass rush grade, 162 pass rush reps. Dude, he has 4 games this season where he has an elite PFF passing grade. And he has, I think he missed 4 games. Yeah, he missed 4 games in the middle of the season. So he has 4 games in which he's graded like sort of pass rushing like in the 60s. Just, all right, okay, not the best. But he has an equal 4 games where he has been elite and dominant. What Nick Herbig has been for the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line has been unbelievable. TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, those guys should get incredible recognition, and honestly, like, their presence on the defensive line allows Nick Herbig to get a lot of one-on-ones, but holy cow, he's winning those one-on-ones. Of the 4 games in which he was an elite pass rusher, which is week 3 against the Chargers, week 5 against the Cowboys, and then the last 2 weeks, week 12 against the Browns, and then week 13 here against the Cincinnati Bengals. He has had a 50% pass rush win percentage, 21.4, 26.3, and 23.5. That is stupid production. That is crazy. He's got 4.5 sacks on the season, so I think, the 4.5 sacks, all right, nobody's really talking about him too much unless you have a PFF Plus subscription, which you can go get over at PFF.com. Shameless plug there. But, dude, I went back and I watched the last 2 games against the Browns and the Bengals. It's the hand usage for me. And it's why I loved Mailata Leonard so much when he was coming out of UCLA. Is he the biggest guy? Is he the strongest guy? Is he the fastest guy? No. Is Jared Verse stronger than him? Yes. Is Dallas Turner more explosive than him? Yes. Does Dallas Turner have a longer arm than him? Yes. None of those guys win with hands the way that Mailata Leonard wins with hands. And I know Jared Verse is obviously having an unbelievable defensive rookie of the year type of season, so not trying to throw shade on any of those guys. But just bringing that back around to Nick Herbig. Nick Herbig's not the biggest dude out there, 6'2", 240 pounds, but he wins so quickly with hands. Whether it's a quick little push-pull just to get the offensive lineman on his heels a little bit, and then boom, okay, now I'm around you, I'm dipping around you, throwing a little dip in there, or it's a two-handed swipe into a dip, it's a club rip and a dip move, whatever it is. Like, the flexibility and the quickness is there, but so is the hand usage. It allows him to stay clean so much. And if offensive linemen can get their hands on him, they can handle him because he's only 6'2", 240 pounds. It's not like he's got these crazy strong counters, although he does have some good finesse counter moves. But once offensive linemen can get their hands on him, he's easier to stop. But the thing is that he has very clearly gone into his NFL career and he's tried to evolve the fact that if they can't get hands on me, I'm a win. And he tries to keep himself as clean as possible. And I think this year you're seeing unbelievable results because of it. So Nick Herbig, I wanted to shout him out. Wondered if you've had a chance to study him at all whatsoever this year, whether it's been recently or just at any point during the 2024 season, because he's been fantastic.
Oh, it is a weekly Tuesday on my calendar. I pull up the Herbig reps. That's like a thing that happens in my household. It's a very sad household over here, Trev. That is like what we do. We
that is a detailed Google calendar that you have there. If you have, all right, for the next 25 minutes, we're going to look at all the Nick Herbig reps specifically this week.
I just think he's a super duper star hiding in plain sight. Even the Steelers, we talked about this early in the season, you remember, with Herbig, where Alex Highsmith gets all the reps, and he's a really talented, good, productive player for them. He fits the role as kind of the third, fourth option with what they do with their front. I just think Herbig's a better player. And I was frustrated he wasn't getting on the field more, or they wouldn't find a way to get all of them on the field together and get a bit wonky with their fronts, where you could have Watt, Hayward, Highsmith, and Herbig in a really slender front and do some creative Vance Joseph type stuff. I felt they were leaving production and creativity off the field by not doing that. And you mentioned it with the hand usage. What I enjoy about watching him is sometimes it's just really frenetic. It's just like, I'm just going to throw these things all over the place, a little Zoolander action going on. People don't know what I'm doing with my hands and my feet together. And then there's also the level of maybe not quite Mailata in college control with the hands, but there's tons of reps of just purposeful movement, throwing guys off balance. You mentioned that attacking back inside is a huge move that he's got. He's certainly got the flexibility to dip and rip around the edge. And it's just a remarkable, not transformation, but there was a real conversation coming out of the draft like, well, is he too small to just play off the edge? Does he quite have the juice and burst to be a true up the field edge rusher? Will he just get swallowed up by these Mailatas and Williams and Sewells, these giant people on the perimeter? Will he have to play inside? Is he more of a mugged inside linebacker who blitzes for you? Then could he ever develop into that? And him just saying, no, I am a one-on-one mauler. I can crush people one-on-one. Give me space. And just the fact that he's playing on a front with Benton and Hayward, and what allows them regularly to split the front in certain ways, where he gets these really smooth paths to one-on-ones against often the better tackle because of where TJ lines up against. So this production is not like inflated just by the fact he's playing on a good front. He often has the trickiest assignment of anyone cycling through. There's a sub rusher, right? He's playing one-on-one football because they don't blitz a ton against the better tackle and winning all the time. So I just could not be more impressed with him. I think he's one of the most underrated stars the league has right now. And I just wish he got to play every single rep because I think the production will be through the roof.
You know, you don't want to always just say, hey, let's trust the stats, right? You don't want to just, stat scout when you're going from college to the NFL because there are a lot of things that go into it. But Nick Herbig, last 2 years that he was at Wisconsin, 9 sacks, 15 tackles for loss. Then 11 sacks, 16 tackles for loss in his final 2 years that he was there. When you look at PFF grades specifically, 91.4 pass rush grade in 2021, and then a 91.0 pass rush grade in 2022. An elite pass rusher, 23.6 pass rush win percentage as a junior, 21.3% pass rush win percentage in his final year. So Nick Herbig's been doing this, I think there's probably no other way to say it. And when you look at his numbers measured up against edge rushers, you're totally right. That was the conversation, because when you look at Nick Herbig measured up against edge rushers at the NFL level, 15th percentile in height, 3rd percentile in weight, 2nd percentile in arm length. And I think that's what really makes it tough. When you have these edge rushers who cannot physically hold up. I mean, that's an outlier. That's 100% an outlier. Nick Herbig being as good as he is at the NFL level, he is an outlier type of a player, and you don't want to make a living betting on those outlier types of players. But there are some that just work. And very clearly, how Nick Herbig wins, it's not that he has short arms, and I think this is a really important sort of scouting tool here. Nick Herbig did not win at Wisconsin just with long arm stuff. Long arm moves, being able to separate and gain the length with the long arm. That's not how he won at Wisconsin. He didn't win at Wisconsin by being overly powerful. He wasn't trying to bull rush everybody. Speed to power was a part of his game, but now it was not a main part of his game. He won at Wisconsin because of the wiggle, the bend, the pass rush IQ, and the hand usage. And that stuff's going to translate at the NFL level. Again, going back to the scouting lesson, it's an issue when, for example, Steve Linton was like this. This is an example. Steve Linton was a pass rusher, and he was in, I believe, last year's class. He might still be in, I actually can't remember now. But anyways, Steve Linton won a lot with a long arm move. And then he gets to the combine, or then we get official measurements or whatever, and his arms aren't that long. So now when it comes to NFL standards, so now you have to look at it okay, you won like this at the college level. You won't be able to win like that at the NFL level. And those are the times when you have to look at production and style and measurements, and you have to blend it all into the tape from what you are watching on tape and how this prospect wins. Nick Herbig won in the ways that he was always going to win at the NFL level. Now at an elite level, okay, that was still, kudos to him. How he is playing is just unbelievably fantastic, and I think that it's a testament to his work ethic and who he is as a player. But it's not like he was doing something in college that wasn't going to translate to the NFL level. It's something that was going to translate to the NFL level. So that's sort of a little scouting lesson of hey, it's not always about production that you see in college and that it's automatically going to happen at the NFL level. But for this one, it felt like, myself included, the NFL included, he goes in the 4th round. Should have maybe given this guy a little bit more of a chance than him getting drafted in the early parts of day 3.
Yeah, and John Ledyard always keeps me in check with these edge rusher guys when I fall in love with the Wisconsin guy who plays off the ball a little bit and he plays with blurry speed. And I just think you mentioned the IQ, just such great feel as a pass rusher. And you ask yourself, well, can the feel just translate instantly to the NFL level? And you mentioned it, go and find the ways that they win. Do the ways they win translate? As you mentioned, if it's a smaller guy and he's a power rusher in college, that's how he wins. It's probably not going to translate when he runs into a brick wall in the league. When he's playing against the pros, got a mortgage on the line. Probably not going to happen. Does he have other tools in his bag? And Herbig, I think, is a good lesson for us all that you can find the outliers. If the outliers win an outlier crazy through the roof rate in a way that can clearly translate into the league, and he's proven that's true.
Appreciate everybody watching and listening to this episode of In the Trenches here for Week 13 in the NFL. For Ollie Connolly, I am Trevor Sikkema saying thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you same time next week. See you guys then.